The Iliad sixth episode. The Iliad sixth episode six continued, and it is after the Iliad, the fall of Troy. The events after the Iliad that led to the fall of Troy are not a part of the poem. After the burial of Hector, the Trojans call on outside forces for help, and the Greeks lose many warriors. In one battle, Achilles encounters Paris, who shoots an arrow that, guided by Apollo, strikes Achilles in the right heel, the only place where he is vulnerable. Airs, Ajax, and Odysseus are able, with great difficulty, to rescue Achilles' body, and immediately there arises a dispute over who is awarded to Odysseus. Airs, Ajax, becomes so furious that he threatens to kill some of the Greek leaders. When he realizes the lack of honor in his threats, he commits suicide. After the death of their two greatest and most precious and most valiant warriors, Aias and Achilles, the Greeks become anxious about ever taking Troy. After consulting various seers and oracles, they are instructed to secure the bows and arrows of Heracles, which are in the hands of Prince Philoctetus, a Greek who was abandoned earlier because of a loathsome wound that would not heal. Odysseus, Odysseus and Diomedes are sent to Philoctetus, and they convince him to return with the bow and arrows. In his first encounter in battle, he is able to kill Paris. This death, however, does not affect the course of the war. The Greeks are then given a series of tasks they must accomplish to secure victory. They must bring bones of Pelops back to Greece from Asia, bring Achilles' son into the war, and steal the sacred image of Athena from the Trojan sanctuary. These tasks accomplished, but none of them changes the course of the war. Then Odysseus conceives a plan whereby the Greeks can get inside the walls of Troy. A great house of wood is constructed with a hollow belly, and of course, that can hold many warriors. In the darkness of the night, the horse is brought to the Trojan plain. Odysseus' surface men are hidden inside the horse. The rest of the Achaeans burn their camps and sail off behind a nearby island. The next morning, the Trojans find that the Greeks So next morning, the Trojans find that the Greeks are um, the Trojans find the Greeks gone and the huge mysterious horse sitting before the Troy. They also discover a Greek named Sinon, whom they take captive. Odysseus provided Sinon with plausible stories about the Greek departure, the wooden horse, and his own presence there to tell the Trojans. Sinon tells Priam and others that Athena deserted the Greeks because of the theft of the image from her temple. Without her help, they were lost and so they departed. But to get home safely, they had to have a human sacrifice. Sinon was chosen, but he escaped and hid. The horse was left to placate the angry goddess, and the Greeks hoped the Trojans would desecrate it, earning Athena's hatred. These lies convinced Priam and many other Trojans, so they pulled the tragic horse inside the gates to honor Athena. That night, the soldiers creep out of the house, kill the sentries, and open the gates to let the Achaean army in. The Achaeans set fire throughout the city, massacred the inhabitants, and lost the city. The Trojan resistance is ineffectual. King Priam is killed, and by morning all but a few Trojans are dead. Only Aeneas with his old father, his young son, and a small band of Trojans escape. Hector's young son, Astyadex, is thrown from the walls of the city. The women who are left are given to the Greek leaders as war prizes to be used as slaves or as concubines. Troy is devastated. Hera and Athena have their revenge upon Paris and upon the city. So the rule of the gods in the Iliad now comes into the question. The gods in the plot. Here are some noteworthy scenes in which God play a significant role. Book 1, Apollo and the Plague. Athena restrains Achilles, Zeus, Thetis, and Hera, Hephaestus, and his parents. In Book 2, we have the Zeus sends Agamemnon a dream, Iris the messenger goddess. The poet invokes the muse to aid him in telling the story of the rage of Achilles, the greatest Greek hero to fight in the Trojan War. The narrative begins 9 years after the start of the war, as the Achaeans sack a Trojan allied town and capture two beautiful maidens, Chryseis and Briseis. Agamemnon, commander in chief of the Achaean army, takes Chryseis as his prize. Achilles, one of the Achaeans' most valuable warriors, claims Briseis. Chryseis' father, a man named Chryses, Chryses, who serves as the priest of the god Apollo, begs Agamemnon to return his daughter and offers to pay an enormous ransom. When Agamemnon refuses, Chryses prays to Apollo for help. Apollo sends a plague upon the Greek camps, causing the death of many soldiers. After 10 days of suffering, Achilles calls an assembly of the Achaean army and asks for the soothsayer to reveal the cause of the plague. Alcestis, a powerful seer, stands up and offers his services. Though he fears retribution from Agamemnon, Calchas reveals the plague as a vengeful and strategic move by Chryses and Apollo. Agamemnon flies into a rage and says that he will return Chryseis, Chryseis, only if Achilles gives him Briseis, Briseis, as compensation. Agamemnon's demand humiliates and infuriates the proud Achilles. The men argue and Achilles threatens to withdraw from battle and take his people, the Myrmidons, back to Tyre. Agamemnon threatens to go to Achilles' tent in the army's camp and take Briseis himself. Achilles stands poised to draw his sword and kill the Achaean commander when the goddess Athena, sent by Hera, the queen of the gods, appears to him and checks his anger. Athena's guidance, along with a speech by the wise advisor Nestor, finally succeeds in preventing the duel. That night, Agamemnon puts Chryseis on a ship back to her father and sends heralds to have Briseis escorted from Achilles' tent. Achilles prays to his mother, the sea nymph Thetis, to ask Zeus, king of the gods, to punish the Achaeans. He relates to her the tale of his quarrel with Agamemnon, and she promises to take the matter up with Zeus, who owes her a favor. As soon as he returns from a 13-day period of feasting with the Ethiopians, meanwhile, the Achaean commander Odysseus is navigating the ship that Chryses has boarded, and when he lands, he returns the maiden and makes sacrifices to Apollo. Chryses, overjoyed to see his daughter, prays to the god to lift the plague from the Achaean camps. Apollo acknowledges his prayer, and Odysseus returns to his comrades. But the end of the plague on the Achaean only marks the beginning of worse suffering. Ever since the quarrel with Agamemnon, Achilles has refused to participate in battle, and after 12 days, Thetis makes her appeal to Zeus. As promised, Zeus is reluctant to help the Trojans for his wife. Hera favors the Greeks, but he finally agrees. Hera becomes livid when she discovers that Zeus is helping the Trojans, but her son Hephaestus persuades her not to plunge the gods into conflict over the mortals. But while the poem focuses most centrally on the rage of a mortal, it also concerns itself the greatly with the motivations and actions of the gods. Even before Homer describes the quarrel between Achilles and Agamemnon, he explains that Apollo was responsible for the conflict. In general, the gods in the poem participate in mortal affairs in two ways. First, they act as external forces upon the course of events, as when Apollo sends the plague upon Achaean army. Second, they represent internal forces acting on individuals, as when Athena, the goddess of wisdom, prevents Achilles from abandoning all reason and persuades him to cut Agamemnon with words and insults rather than his sword. But while the gods serve as a serious function in partially determining grave matters of peace and violence, the life and death. They also serve one final function, that of comic relief. Their intrigue, double dealing, and inane squabbles often appear humorously petty in comparison with the wholesale slaughter that pervades the mortal realm, REALM. The bickering between Zeus and Hera, for example, provides a much lighter parallel to the heated exchange between Agamemnon and Achilles. Indeed, in their submission to base appetites and shallow grudges, the gods of the Iliad often seem more prone to human folly than the human characters themselves. Zeus promises to help the Trojans not out of any profound moral consideration, but rather because he owes Thetis a favor. Similarly, his hesitation in making this promise stems not from some worthy desire to let fate play itself out, but from his fear of annoying his wife. When Hera does indeed become annoyed, Zeus is able to silence her only by threatening to strangle her. Such instances of partisanship, hurt feelings, and domestic strife, common among the gods of the Iliad, portrayed the gods and goddesses as less invincible, and imperturbable than we might imagine them, to sensitivities and occasionally dysfunctional relationship of the human character, but the divine ones. The clash between Achilles and Agamemnon highlight one of the most important aspects of the ancient Greek value system, the vital importance of personal honor. Both Agamemnon and Achilles prioritize, prioritize their respective individual glories over the well-being of the Achaean forces. Agamemnon believes that as the chief of the Achaean forces, he deserves the highest available prize, Briseis, and is thus willing to antagonize Achilles, the most crucial Achaean warrior, to secure what he believes is properly owed to him. Achilles would defend his claim to Briseis, his personal spoil of victory, and thus what he believes is properly owed to him. Then diffuse the situation. Each man considers deferring to the other a humiliation rather than an act of honor or duty. Each puts his own interest ahead of that of his people, jeopardizing the war effort. To help the Trojans, he promised Zeus sends a false dream to Agamemnon, to which a figure in the form of Nestor persuades Agamemnon that he can take Troy if he launches a full-scale assault on the city's walls. The next day, Agamemnon gathers his troops to attack. But to test their courage, he lies and tells them that he has decided to give up the war and return to Greece. To his dismay, they eagerly run to their ships. When Hera sees the Achaeans fleeing, she alerts Athena, who inspires Odysseus, the most eloquent of the Achaeans, to call the men back. He shouts words of encouragement and insults to goad their pride and restore their confidence. He reminds them of the prophecy that the soothsayer Calchas gave when the Achaeans were first mustering their courage back, soldiers back to Greece. A water snake had slithered to shore and devoured a nest of 9 sparrows, and Calchas interpreted the sign to mean that 9 years would pass before the Achaeans would finally take Troy. As Odysseus reminds them, they vowed at that time that they would not abandon the struggle until the city fell. Nestor now encourages Agamemnon to arrange the troops to buy city and clan so that they can fight side by side with their friends and kin. The poet takes this opportunity to enter into a catalogue of the army after invoking the muses to aid his memory. He details the cities that have contributed troops to the Greek cause, the number of troops that each has contributed, and who leads each contingent. At the end of the list, the poet singles out the bravest of the Achaeans, Achilles and Ajax among them. When Zeus sends a messenger to the Trojan court telling them of the Greeks' awesome formation, the Trojans muster their own troops under the command of the Priam's son Hector. The poet then catalogs the Trojan forces. Greek gods are the anthropomorphic gods who possess various human characteristics. Based on these characteristics, Homer depicts them as very competitive beings who are constantly trying to prove themselves superior to the others. In Iliad, some gods sided Achaeans while the others sided Trojans, but they share something common, which is they all interfered in the war, which resulted in various unexpected experiences. Therefore, in Homer's Iliad, Greek gods intervene in the war to help their favorite mortals control the fate of the soldiers and cause the unexpected twists and turns in the plot. During the Trojan War, different gods take different sides and they are depicted very generous to their favorite mortals. For instance, Paris declares Aphrodite as the most beautiful among other goddesses. As a result, he becomes Aphrodite's favorite and receives aid during the war. In this way, it is very beneficial to a mortal if he has God's power on his side. So we see that, for example, in Book 1, Chryses the priest is not physically as powerful as Agamemnon or Achilles. But when Agamemnon refuses to return Chryses' daughters back, Chryses succeeds in punishing Achilles with Apollo's help. Now, when he heard this prayer, Phoebus, Apollo's walked with storm in his heart from the Olympus crest, quiver and bow in his back, and the bundled arrows clanged on the sky behind as he rocked in his anger, descending on the sky behind as he rocked in his anger, descending the night itself. Consequently, the Greek gods help their favorite mortals in every situation without worrying about the possible consequences. Having the kind of support from a god is a substantial power, a power a mortal can have. The fact that gods help mortals regularly reintroduces the role of the gods in deciding the fate in Iliad. Homer depicts gods as the ultimate deciders of the fate of mortals. As an example, book starts with the lines, leaving so many dead men carrion for dogs and birds, and the will of Zeus was done. That it is in Book 1, lines 5 to 6. This reveals that the consequences of the war is the will of the immortals, which is fulfilled through the actions of mortals. With our view of God, it can sometimes be difficult to comprehend the actions and thinking of the Greek deities. The Christian God does not tend to take such an active role in the affairs of the people's lives, where on the other hand, the Greeks regarded direct involvement by the gods as a daily uncontrollable part of life. Needless to say, divine intervention was a major variable in the equation of the Homer's Iliad. The gods picked who they would favor for different reasons, except Zeus as the symbol of supreme authority and justice. He makes judgment calls as to the other gods. Involvement in the war remains impartial and doesn't seem to get caught up in picking favorites. On the other hand, Zeus's wife Hera displayed the more typical actions of a god. After Paris, a Trojan judged Aphrodite, the fairest over Hera, and after her daughter Hebe was replaced as cupbearer to the gods by a young Trojan boy, she was quite resentful towards Troy and its people. Obviously, she sided with the Greeks and would stop at no length to express her will. Scheming and manipulating, she even dared to trick her husband, king of the gods, Hera, along with the Athenian, who was also passed over by Paris, is seen as the chief divine aid to the Greeks. Being the god of the sea, Poseidon was another strong support of the ocean-faring Greeks. Whenever Zeus turned his back, Poseidon tried to help the Greeks in the fight. Poseidon felt that he was somewhat Zeus's equal as his brother, but recognizing Zeus's authority and experience, he looked to Zeus as an elder. There were also gods who favored the Trojans' side of the conflict. Both Apollo and Artemis, twin brothers and sisters, gave aid to the city of Troy. Although Artemis takes a rather minor role, Apollo, perhaps angered by Agamemnon's refusal to ransom Chryseis, the daughter of one of his priests, and was constantly changing the course of the war in favor of the Trojans, reasonable for sending plague to the Greeks. Apollo was the first god to make an appearance in the Iliad, also mainly because Apollo and Artemis were on the Trojan side. Their mother Leto also helped the Trojans. Aphrodite, obviously supporting the Paris' judgment, sided with the Trojans. Also, although she was insignificant on the battlefield, Aphrodite was successful in convincing Ares, her lover, and the god of the war to help the Trojans.